I mean, I could use this one. Sometimes I'm not comfortable using this stuff. This is colored. But I'm going to use like this one with the nakudos a little bit. Maybe I'll switch back eventually. Just that they're both the same. Yeah. They're both the same. See that? Okay. It's nice. It's an easy daf today. Which do you like better? This one, which has no nakudas, but it breaks down the sugyas into different colors. But this one becomes easier to read on the screen.
This is easier to read, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Ein Choshishin, yeah. Okay. Okay. I was noticing yesterday we learned something interesting, and I just want to bring a point out. The Gemara discussed yesterday regarding a collapsed wall, right? Say, it was one time part of your house, and you used to put chametz in a cubby in the wall in the house, and then it collapses. The Brisa said you don't have to do bedika there. If there's a possibility that if when you're going to stick your hands amongst the rubble, there's an akrov, there's a scorpion there. So even though this pile of rubble is going to get uncovered on Pesach by a dog, but because there's a sakana, as you're going to stick your hand looking for chametz there, you're exempt from doing bedika there. That's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara is troubled by that question. How could it be that the Chazal exempt you from doing bedika there? We know that when you're doing a mitzvah, it's impossible something bad can happen to you. So therefore, go down, do the bedika. Nothing will happen to you. So the Gemara concludes that the reason why you're potter from bedika is, if you recall, because maybe after you're going to finish your bedika, you're going to look for a brooch, a pin, or something like that. You're going to be you'll be finished with the mitzvah, and then you'll continue searching. And then you're going to be putting yourself in danger. So therefore, they exempted you from doing bedika. So what I thought was pretty amazing is that if a person is always doing a mitzvah, he need not be concerned of any harm happening to them. So when I took that lesson today, when I went to work or whatever I did, I always said to myself, okay, right now I'm going to be doing a mitzvah. Nothing bad can happen to me. And if you constantly focus your day around that and pay attention to what you're doing, most of the time you're doing a mitzvah. And even when you think you're not doing a mitzvah, there's a mitzvah involved. And when you think that way, the Gemara says a guarantee that no harm can happen to you.
So how come they weren't thinking like that when they said you shouldn't use a torch because you might light your curtains or something? It should have been of no sakana at all using anything.
That's not why they said you can't use a torch.
They said you would be scared that it would cause a fire.
You'd be scared and you would not do the bedika. Not because it would be damaged. You would not do the bedika well. A torch doesn't give off good light, or you'll be shaking and you're not doing the bedika well. You'll be focused on the torch. But not because something bad can happen to you. That's why they said that it's just a torch doesn't give a good light, but shlicha mitzvah, ein nezakin, is real. It's very real that when you're doing a mitzvah, nothing harm can happen to you. And also the Gemara proves from Sukkim that on your way back, nothing can happen to you. So when you're finished the mitzvah, now you got to go back to your beginning, your start position. Nothing bad can happen to you. It's a Gemara to remember. Okay, we begin the Mishnah on Daf Tesam at Aleph. Mishnah is dealing with somebody. It's like an OCD Mishnah. The Mishnah says that after you do bedika, ein choshishen, we're not concerned. After you finish, you're doing the bedika to your house, we're not concerned, shema gera chulda mibayis labayis, that maybe a weasel or a mouse took chametz from somebody who did not finish his bedika and brought it over to your house that did finish the bedika. So you could be finished, you finished your bedika, but your neighbor did not. So the Mishnah says, don't be concerned that maybe a mouse came from your neighbor's house and brought over chametz to your house. Or even in your own house, mimakam lamakam, from place to place. Let's say you finished the upstairs room in your house, and now you're going downstairs. Don't think that while you're downstairs, a mouse came and took chametz back to the upstairs. So that you don't have to be concerned about. Why? The Mishnah gives you a logical reason. Because then your OCD will never end. Why? Let's say you have a whole group of people in one area that finished bedika all at the same time. They finished all their houses on block A, but block B did not yet finish. So maybe chametz was brought over from block B to block A. So from one courtyard to another courtyard. Or ear to ear, from city to city. Let's say the whole Brooklyn finished bedika at one time. So you'll always be concerned that maybe they brought over, a mouse brought over chametz from Queens. So to the people who are living in Brooklyn, from city to city. So you can never draw the line here. So ein l'dava sof, there will be no end to your OCD. The Mishnah says that once you finish your bedika, you can assume that it's all good and it's going to remain good throughout the Pesach. So the Gemara challenges that question. The Gemara says, Taima, the whole reason is Doloi chazin and dishkal. We did not see the weasel take the chametz, right? If you didn't see him, then you don't have to be concerned. Ha chazin and dishkal. But if you do see the mouse take chametz back into your house, chayshinim, then you're concerned. And therefore, maybe the mouse brought the chametz right back into your house because you saw the mouse run into your house, or buy a bedika, and you'd have to redo the bedika of the whole house again. As a side, I work in Bushwick. That's a big problem in Bushwick. There's rats all over, and you're dealing with exterminators all the time. And so the Gemara says, if you see a rat running into your house, you would require a new bedika. So the Gemara says, Va'amai, why should I require a new bedika? Name achalte. Let us assume that the mouse ate up the bread that it was carrying into your house. Didn't we learn in the Mishnah? The Mishnah is talking about if you rented in Israel. Let's say you have an apartment in Israel. The Mishnah says in Masechta Oilos, a very interesting din. Medoiris hagoyim tameim. A house that you rented to the goy, right? You could automatically assume that there's a dead body in the house. Why? And the kama yisha b'moda v'yemoda tzarach bedika. How long does the goy have to live in that apartment that you could for sure assume that there's a dead body in the house, and that you would have to recheck the house to make sure there's no dead bodies in the house? 40 days. Even if he doesn't have a wife. What the Mishnah means to say is like this: we can assume that the goyim, when their mistress would give birth in their house, they would bury the stillborn in the house itself. They wouldn't even bring it out. They would dig a hole in the house and put the baby there, the dead baby there. So even if the goy is not married, of course, we assume that he had relations with a woman and the woman gave birth in his house and he buried a baby there. And therefore, if the goy lived in that apartment more than 40 days, and any Jew that walks into that apartment becomes a tamei mace, as if he touched a dead body. Because we assume somewhere on the floor there's a dead part of a navel. Now, the Mishnah adds, but if this type of goy had weasels and chazir and pigs running around the house, then you don't have to check, because we assume that even if he dropped a dead person there, a dead nafel, the chulda, the weasel, or the chazir took it. So we see, so that is a contradiction. Our Mishnah says that we can assume, or our Mishnah implies, that if the rat goes into your house, we assume that he dropped a few of the crumbs all around your house. And therefore, you'd have to do a new bedika. But in this price, it says that if there's a rat or a chazir in the house, we can assume that he ate up entirely the dead fetus. And therefore, you don't even need a bedika. You can assume that the whole house is clean. So how do you resolve that? Do the chuldas, do the weasels eat everything up, or do they leave things over? So Amar Rab Zera, very simple terrace. Loi kashit is no difficulty. Ha bebasar, when it concerns itself with human flesh or flesh, it eats the whole thing up. Ha belechem, when it's bread, it does not. Bebasar, if it's meat, loi mishayra, it does not leave it over. And especially, as Tosfos explains, a baby that's stillborn is soft meat, so it's not going to leave anything over. Belechem mishayra, but when it comes to bread, it'll drop crumbs all over your house, and therefore you would need a new bedika. So that's not a difficulty between that Mishnah and our Mishnah. Amar Rava. So Rava says, even to begin with, you don't have a question. Hi, my. What kind of question did you ask? Bishla mahasam, over there in the case with the goy's apartment, we don't know for sure that there was a nafel there, that there's a stillborn dead body buried there. Amar hava. Maybe you could say that there was a stillborn, dead baby there. Maybe it's not. So even if you want to say that there was a stillborn there, then you could assume perhaps the rat ate up consumed the entire basar, entire body. Over here, the vade the chazina dishkal. We saw the rat go in the house with the chametz in there. Would you say that? Do you know for sure that it ate it? Have a suffix. It's a doubt. The doubt of a suffix vade, and it's a suffix versus a certainty. A doubt versus a certainty. The ain suffix might see midei vade. A suffix, a doubt, does not win over a certainty. You have a certainty that the chametz, that the weasel or the rat went into the house with chametz. You don't know, but maybe the rat ate all the chametz. It didn't leave anything in the house. So that is a doubt, cannot win over a certainty. But by the Mishnah in Masechta Oilos, right, you don't know for sure if there was a dead person there, dead body there. It's a doubt. It's a suffix. So it's one doubt versus the doubt that maybe the rat ate the whole thing up. So it's a suffix versus a suffix. Then you say then the suffix could, do away with another suffix. But here in our Mishnah, it's a suffix versus a certainty, and the suffix does not trump a certainty. So the Gemara challenges that. The ain suffix might see midei vadai. Would not a suffix exclude? Would not take over, trump a certainty? Now, v'hotanya, we learned in a brisa. Now, this brisa is like this. In order for something, let's say you have wheat in the field, in order for it to be chayiv in trumas or maisris, you have to take off the shaft, winnowing, put it into a pile, and then once you take that pile and bring it into your house, that's when it's chayiv in truma d'oraisa, trumas or maisris d'oraisa, and you're not allowed to eat anything of that until you give off trumas or maisris. It's called tevel. But before you did the gamar malacha, before you did winnowing, taking off the shaft, before you bring it into your house, in the field itself, you're allowed to snack on a piece of wheat right there, and you're allowed to give it into your animals to eat, because an animal you're allowed to give not just a snack, a regular meal out there in the field. Once you bring it into your house as a finished product, that's when it becomes obligated to give trumas and maisros, and you're not allowed to have a no benefit from it. You have to give off trumas and maisros. So the Brisa says, what happens? You have a chaver, a Talmud chacham shemeis that passed on, and in his room, right where he passed on, v'hiniach mogura milei peres, he left a basket full of fruits. You can tell that they were just recently brought into the house, right that day. So you could assume, says the Brisa, you could assume for certainly that even though the Chaver, the Talmud Chacham, died, right before his death, he took off Trumas and Maasros because he was afraid that maybe somebody's going to eat these fruits and it's going to be Tevel. So he made sure a Talmud Chacham never wants to have something that could cause somebody else to do a Neveira in his possession. So right away, a Talmud Chacham gives off Trumas and Maasros. Now, so the Gemara examines that question. In our case, the Vadei Tvile Hane Peir. We know for certain that these Peiros are for certainly Chuyev and Trumas and Maasros. They're in the guy's house, and it looks like a finished product. V'safek mu'usarim, v'safek loy mu'usarim. And you have a doubt whether the Talmud Chacham gave Meiser or the Talmud Chacham did not give off Meiser. And we see that the next guy, the child of the Chaver, could eat the fruits without giving off Trumas and Maasros. The Yairish, the son, so to speak, can take his father's fruits and eat it. But it's only a suffix whether the father gave Meiser or not, versus the certainty that it was Mechuyev in Trumas and Maasros. The Ka'asis suffix, we see the suffix Umaytzimidei Vadai trumps over the Vadai, the certainty that's Mechuyev in Maasros, and the suffix, well, maybe the Talmud Chacham gave Trumas and Maasros before he died, wins out over the certainty. So the Gemara answers no. Hasam, it's not a suffix versus a vadai. Hasam over there, vadai, vadaihu. It's a certainty versus a certainty. The certainty is that it's mechuyev trumas and maasros because it's a finished product in somebody's house. But the vadai ma'asre, we are certain that the Talmud Chacham did give maasros. Could Rab Chanina Chazar explained. The Amar Rab Chanina said, Chazaka, there's an assumption, a certain assumption, al chaver, a Talmud Chacham, she'ein moitzi mitachas yodi davar she'ein mesukim. You will not find anything in his possessions that's not kosher or that's not completely tithe. So therefore, it's a guarantee that the Talmud Chacham gave Maasros. So it's a vadai, a certainty versus a certainty. It's not a question. The Ibai is saying, if you want, I can tell you the opposite. I'm going to go to the other extreme. Suffix the suffixu. It's a doubt versus a doubt. The doubt is that maybe the Talmud Chacham did not give off Trumas and Maasros, but it's an also doubt that these fruits are mechuyev in Trumas and Maasros. Now, why? It's a finished product in somebody's house, but the thing is that there's a possibility that there's a tax loophole over here. If the fruits were brought into the house prior to the becoming a finished product, then you're not mechuyev in Trumas and Maasros on the product. In other words, if you didn't do winnowing, you didn't take off the shaft of the wheat, and you just brought it into your house as an unfinished product, then it's not mechuyev in Trumas and Maasros. And even if you finish the product in your house, you potter. The only time you chayiv is two things have to happen. One, you finish the product in the fields, and then you bring it directly through your door, in through the front door. But if you don't have those two conditions, then you potter. So that's why it's a suffix here. You don't know it was mechuyev. This fruits that you found in the dead person's room, it's not certain that it was mechuyev in Trumas Maasros. Suffix v'suffixu. Maybe it was never tevel in the first place, and you don't have to give off Trumas and Maasros over here. There's a tax loophole. Rabbi Shaya taught us, a person could do a shrewd thing regarding his produce, with his wheat, and not be mechayev to give off his taxes, his Trumas and Maasros. Why? How does he do that? You bring it into your house with its shaft. Your animal can eat it right away as a big meal. Upeturim and a meiser, and it's potter from meiser also, because once you bring it to the house as an unfinished product, it's potter from meiser. So the thing is like this: these fruits that you see here possibly were brought in such a way that they do not have a chi of Trumas and Maasros to begin with. You have a doubt. It's a suffix. Maybe yes, maybe not. Then you have another doubt. Maybe the Talmud Chacham gave off Trumas and Maasros, or maybe he did not before he passed on. So it's a suffix versus a suffix. That can work. Suffix can outtake another suffix. But when we're dealing with a suffix versus a vadai, which is the case that we're talking about over here, by chametz, you saw a rat go into the house, so you know chametz is back into your house again. You don't know if the rat ate the chametz prior or he left crumbs all around your house. So you have a doubt. Ein suffix moitzi b'dei vale. New question. The ein suffix moitzi b'dei vale, a doubt cannot trump a certainty. Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda said, "Ma'aseh b'shifchosei shel meitzik echad b'rimon." A guy who lived in this place called Rimon had a goyish maid. Now, a goyish maid is not like our maids. It's a maid that has a div like a Jewish lady. She's chayiv and she has hilchas nida applying to her. And he was the meitzik. He was a very strong person, a very strong personality. Probably what the Gemara is saying is that this maid was very scared of her boss. And she had relations and she miscarried. And she hatila nefel labar. And she threw the baby into the water pit, into a pit. Okay? Now, Uva HaKoyen, the rabbi, the Kohen came, and he had to bend over the Heitzitz boy, and he bent over the hole, we're up to Chesamid base, laid that in Zachahu Nekevi. He wanted to find out what was the dead body. Was it a male or whether it was a female? Why does he need to know that? Because we know that there's a different tumah, how long you're tummy. If you have a female, you're tummy for 14 days. If you have a male, a boy, you're tummy for 7 days. So he had to find out, he wanted to find out whether this nafel, what was he, male or female? Now, the Kohen did a big mistake over here, and that is that once you bend over, you're risking the fact that the Kohen, could become a Tommy Mace. Because when a Kohen leans over a dead body, the tumah of a dead body goes straight up and hits him in the face, and he becomes Tomei. Even, it's called Mahel Alames. And a Kohen has the Azara, like we see in Rashi over here, Lenefesh lo yitama. He's not allowed to touch it. He's not allowed to become Tomei through a dead body. So this Kohen made the mistake of being the one searching into the pit to see if it's a male body or a female body. At the end of the day, he didn't see anything there. The Chachamim said, the story came to the Chachamim, they said that this Kohen is Tahar. Why? There's no body there. There must have been a rat or a weasel or some other type of rodent or predator or scavenger and took the dead body back to its lair, back to its little hole. In other words, as Rashi explains, that let's say the rat saw this dead carcass, took the body into the little hole that it has, and it makes a little hole on the side of the pit, which is a wide tefach. Rashi explains that the hole in the side of the pit has to be deep a tefach, because if it isn't, as soon as the kohen steps on the dirt on top of it, the dirt goes above and hits him and is matama him. But once there's like an oil tefach, like a tefach, so then it's like a hefsek. So there's like a interruption, and therefore the kohen would not be tamei just because he's standing on the top. And also the hole itself was not a tefach. So that's a very interesting thing. The hole itself was not a tefach, but inside the hole had to be a tefach. And the reason the hole itself should not be a tefach, because if the hole was tefach, as soon as the dead body entered the pit, even the tumor went into that hole. So the hole itself is not a tefach. The rat comes out, takes the nafel, brings it into its hole, and this home is the height of a tefach. So therefore, that's what we can assume. That's what happened. That's why you didn't find the body there, and the kohen is completely tore. Says the Gemara. So that's what the story ends. V'hahacha. That case, the vade hetila. We know for certain that this woman put a dead body into that pit. So there's a dead body for sure there. It's a doubt whether the weasel schlepped it back to its home, to its hole, or it did not. We have a doubt. It's a possibility each way. At the time that he bent over, we don't know. The ka'asi suffix, this doubt, will trump and win out over the certainty. And what do? We say the kohen is tahar. We say that what happened was that the weasel took the dead carcass and brought it into its hole, and therefore you, Mr. Kohen, are tahar. So we see suffix trumps, wins a certainty. That's a question on Rava. So the Gemara says, Loi tema shetila nefer labar. Don't say the story was that she put a dead body into the bar, a dead fetus into the bar. Ela Ainbra, we have to say, Shapila kamin nefer labar. It was like a embryo or fetus into the pit. In other words, she gave birth to a sack, like an empty sack. We don't know. Maybe there was a body in there. Maybe there wasn't a body there. It's not certainly. I have a suffix versus a suffix. It's a suffix versus a suffix if there was a dead body there at all. And suffix, even if you want to say there was a dead body, maybe the weasel took it. So, for the Gemara, how could you say that's the pshat of the story? If you look at the beginning of the brisa, the kohen bent over to see if it's male or female. So it's mashma. We can imply that the story was, we know for sure that it was a dead body in there, dead embryo in there. So the Gemara says, no, hachi kamar. This is what the brisa means to say. The kohen bent over the pit, laid it im ruach hipila, im nefel hipila. Whether she gave birth to wind or actually a fetus. And then after he determines whether it was wind or a fetus, she gave birth to a nefel, then he had to ascertain later if it was a male, a nekeva, or a female. So that was a suffix versus a suffix. So we got the case wrong. The Iba is saying again, the opposite case. Vadai Hassam over there, Vadaihu. It was a certainty versus a certainty. The certainty was there was for sure a nafel there, for sure a dead body there. But Kevan de Chulda Ubardalus Mutsuyin Sham. So now that you know there's a rats there and other scavengers there, Vadai Geruah Bahi Shaita, they for sure dragged it to its own, at that moment, to its hole. Doesn't mean that they for sure ate it up. They just dragged it to its hole. It's possible, the Shayura Mishiaira, that they left some over. They didn't fully eat up the nafel, but Migra Mias Vade Gorum Bahi Shata. They for sure schlepped it into their hole. So we know for sure that they schlepped it into their hole. So it's a Vadai versus a Vadai. So, but in our case, by the Chametz, it's a suffix. You know for sure that the rat brought the chametz into the house, but you only have a suffix that maybe the rat ate up all the chametz that it brought into the house, or it left something over. There, it's a suffix. But when it comes to our case by the nafel, we always assume that the rat for certainly brought it into its hole, into its little home, and therefore, once the rat does that, you don't have a problem with the kohen anymore because it's out of sight over the airspace of the pit where the kohen bent over. So that's why the kohen over there was tahar. So now the Gemara asks another fascinating question. I'm reading, would you say, would you not say that we're not concerned that maybe that the rat took it? In our Mishnah, we said that once you did the bedika, it's out of sight, out of mind. Don't worry about rats anymore. Well, Ketani Sefer, in the end of our Mishnah, in the end of in the Mishnayos that we're going to learn, it says that after you do the bedika and you have the 10 pieces of bread, Mashi Mishaya, whatever you leave over, Yani Chenebetzina, put it away in a private corner. Shaloi Yehei Tzara Bedika Acharav. So you should not do you don't have to require to do a bedika. Because if you're not going to be careful about the bread that you just connected, if you're not going to be careful about it, then it could come that a rat is going to come take it. So therefore, the Mishnah advises you to put it into a very, very safe place. So now it's a stiris of Mishnayos. Our Mishnah says that once you do bedika, it's out of sight, out of mind. Don't think about rats. And this Mishnah says, once you finish your bedika, make sure to put the extra breads that you collected, put it in a safe, secure place so that rats don't come. So Amar Abaye says, Loi Kasha. Rabbi gives the most fascinating teretz that you'll see in the Talmud. He says like this: Ha ba'arba'asa. That Mishnah is talking about when you did on the 14th day. You did the bedika on the 14th day. Ha, our Mishnah is b'shloisha asar. Is talking about when you did the bedika on the 13th day. So listen here. B'shloisha asar. When you do the bedika on the 13th day, right? Let's say you did it on the 13th during the daytime or the night before. The rat knows all around town the shchiach rifta b'kula bate. he has bread in other houses, right? So just because you cleaned out your house spick and span, he's not going to come back to your house or he's not going to come back, bring chametz into your house. He knows and try to, like a squirrel, hide chametz in your house, because he knows he doesn't have to hide anything anymore, because the whole city is full of chametz. So loy matznah, he's not going to preserve it. He's not going to hide any chametz. He doesn't need to. But Abasa, on the 14th day of Nisan, in the morning, right? So he goes around to all different houses and sees nobody has chametz, nobody has food in the house. The loish chicharifta, there's no food around. Bekuli bate in all the houses. So then we are concerned that he's going to find somebody's 10 pieces of bread and he's going to hide it somewhere. Matznah, then he's going to start looking around to preserve extra food, because he thinks that there's not going to be food anymore. So on the 14th day, he's very nervous and he hides food all around. So Alma Rava almost like mockingly says to Abaya, V'chichulda nevihi, is the rat a prophet? In other words, does the rat know if it's the 13th or the 14th day and what's going to happen? There's no food. And this is a play on word. There was actually in Tanakh somebody, a Naviya, a woman called Hulda, who actually was a prophetess. But this is a play on the words. It's almost laughable to say that this rat will know the difference between the 13th and the 14th day. The Yada, that rat will know, the Idana Abesa, that today is the 14th, and there's not going to be food till the nighttime, because people are going to bake matzahs at night. There's no food around, and therefore Mashayim, it leaves over umatamra and going to hide things around. Ella Omer Rava explains it better. Masha Mashayir yanichenu betzinah. Whatever you leave, you should put it in a safe hiding place. That means Shema titachul b'feneinu v'yitzarach b'dikachav. The reason why you hide the 10 breads is because maybe you'll witness a rat. Not that you're choishes for rat, but you'll see a rat come before you, and he's going to take the chametz right in front of your eyes, and then you're going to have to do a whole bedika again because you don't know where he left it. So therefore, that's why they advised you to take the breads and put it in a safe hiding place and don't leave it around. But as long as you don't see a rat, you don't have to do a new bedika, because we're never concerned about rats if we don't see one. Tanya Kavashi the Rava, this is exactly what the Brisa says, exactly aligns itself with Rava. If someone wants to eat the chametz after bedika, he wants to eat like a bagel, what you do, you could eat it, but masha mashaya, whatever you leave over, yanichena bitsina, you should put it away in a very safe hiding place. Shloi tove chulda, a rat should not come, betitel bifonenu, take it in front of you, and then you're going to be required to do bedika right after this. Right after you see the rat, you're going to have to do a new bedika. So therefore, that's what we're concerned about. But as long as you don't see the rat, you don't have to be concerned. Rav Mari says, even if you don't see the rat, you could still be concerned if you see that you're missing something. Zera, we're afraid, Shema, Yaniach Eser, you're going to count and you put down 10 pieces of bread. And then when you want to burn the chametz, V'yimtza Teisha, and you're going to find 9 pieces of bread. Oh, once you have something of suspect, you have a suspicion that something is missing over here, then you have to suspect that a rat came and took one of the pieces of bread, and that's why you have to do bedika. But as long as they have no indication that a rat came, we trust our Mishnah. You don't have to be OCD about it. You don't have to redo the whole bedika. Let's do one piece of small Gemara and then stop. Okay, new Gemara, but very interesting. If you like probability, this is a nice piece of Gemara to remember. The Gemara gives you an example. You have 9 piles in front of you of matzah, food, kosher Pesach food, and 1 pile had chametz food. Okay, and that's standing outside your house. Okay, and you did your bedika, but now you see a rat ushkal and took food from one of the piles. We don't know for sure. If he took from the 9 piles of not of not a kosher Pesach food, chametz shakal, or he took from the kosher of not chametz food. So then the halacha is hainu teisha chanuyos. That's the same story of the 9 stores, which we're going to learn in the Mishnah. And that means you will have to do the bedika, even though one could argue and say, most likely the rat took from the chametz, from the matzah, from the kosher Pesach food, because there's 9 piles of kosher Pesach food. No, that halacha will be like the 9 stores, and we're going to see that in the Mishnah, and therefore you'd have to redo your bedika. What happens, Peirash? Let's say the food is not in the piles. It's somewhere else. It came from this group of the 9 piles versus the 1 pile, but it's broke away and it's in its own place. So you could assume that this food is kosher Pesach because the roiv, the majority was kosher Pesach food. And then once it separated itself out and then the rat came and took it, Hainu Sefer, that will be this second part of this following Mishnah, which says that you can assume it comes from the roiv. That's now we learned in the Mishnah. Teisha chanuyos. Let's say you have 9 stores in the neighborhood. Everybody sells kosher food, right? They're all under the vad. And one's not on the vad, okay? And it's selling basar nevela, non-kosher food. You walked into one of those stores and you did not make notice which store you were going to. So if you think about it without looking at the Mishnah, I would say, go after roiv. Most of the stores send kosher. You walked into the store. We can assume you walked into the kosher store. The Mishnah says, sveikoi osir. The sveikoi is osir because we look at it as an equal probable event. And then once you go into a place, it becomes a 50-50 question, whether you went to the kosher store or went to a non-kosher store. And therefore, it's sveikoi osir. But ubanimtza, but if you find the piece of meat outside your house, halech acha haroiv, then you go after the roiv. That means if you find it on the street, right? You find a piece of meat on the street, then, and you don't know if it came from the kosher stores or the non-kosher store, 9 are kosher, 1 is not kosher, you can eat the piece of meat, you go after the roiv. So that is there we apply what's called theoretical probability. And when you take the whole group, we assume that it came from the roiv of the stores. So just to conclude, that's the same story in our case. You have 9 piles of matzah, the 1 pile of chametz, and the rat went to that matzah, to those piles, and you don't know which pile he went to, and then walked into your house, you got to do the bedika. Because we assume that there's most likely that it's 50-50 that he went into took the food from the matzah pile. But if the food dislodged itself from the group and it's just laying there by itself, so we can assume that the food itself came from the matzah pile because called the parish, meruba parish. Anything separated out comes from the majority. And from the majority was kosher Pesach food. If the rat took that food, then you would not have to do another bedika. So we'll stop over here. But this is the sugya, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7, 8 lines from the bottom. But the Gemara just gives you different cases of probability, and it's a wonderful Gemara if you like this kind of math. And it's very interesting that what you think is obvious is not so obvious. Okay.
Shkor.
Oh, very nice share. Okay, very
beautiful.
Nice with Gemara. Okay, see you tomorrow night. All the best.
Good night.
Good night.